You know that uneasy stillness just before something big happens? That's what this felt like. Not peace, a pause before the storm. Out here on the Arctic ice, we weren't alone, and the quiet was hiding more than cold wind and frozen snow. I was with a group of Inuit hunters, walking across a stretch of landscape that looked more like another planet than part of Earth. No trees, no shadows, just white on white. They moved with calm purpose, like the ice was something they'd been reading since childhood. I, on the other hand, was trying not to look like someone who regretted signing up. We had a straightforward goal: hunt for seals and return to camp before the weather turned. But in the Arctic, straightforward often bends into dangerous before you even realize it. Then it happened. The lead hunter, usually quiet, suddenly raised his hand. Everyone froze. No words needed. We had arrived at a seal breathing hole, a sign we were in the right area. But something was off. He bent down to the snow, brows tight. That look told me everything. This wasn't just about seals. I stepped closer to see what stopped him. That's when I saw it. A paw print. Massive, clean, and unmistakably fresh. More than 10 inches wide, with claw marks like someone dragged knives through the snow. Not the tracks of prey. This was a predator's mark. Nanook, he murmured. The word landed harder than I expected. Polar bear. I knelt down, heart starting to pick up speed. The snow inside the print hadn't crusted over. This wasn't hours old. It was recent. Too recent. Before I could ask anything, the youngest hunter pointed to another set of tracks, smaller ones weaving along the same trail. Fox, he whispered. They follow the bear, wait for scraps. That image stuck with me. A tiny scavenger trailing a giant killer, hoping for leftovers. But even more unsettling was the reaction of the sled dogs. One stiffened. Another sniffed the wind, then gave a low growl. Not barking, not whining, just warning. That's when it hit me. The silence wasn't natural. It was tense. The kind that comes when something bigger is nearby. The lead hunter rose slowly, eyes locked on the distant snowfield. No need to say it. We all knew. The bear wasn't just a memory. It was still here, somewhere just out of sight, sharing this vast white space with us. And in this land, you don't find the bear. The bear finds you. If you're enjoying this video, hit that red subscribe button. It's free, quick, and helps more people discover Arctic stories like this. Your support keeps this channel going. The snow tells stories if you know how to read them, and the Inuit do. While I tried to scan the endless ice for any sign of movement, the hunters were already deciphering the ground. The tracks weren't just random. They formed a trail, a pattern of purpose. This bear wasn't wandering. It was headed somewhere, with intent in every step. The lead hunter gestured toward the paw prints with a quiet nod. They weren't deep enough to be old, and the snow hadn't had time to drift over them. The bear had passed through recently, maybe minutes before we arrived. My pulse kicked up another notch. The dogs felt it too. At first, only one shifted. A big gray husky lifted its snout to the wind, ears twitching. A low rumble vibrated in its chest. Then another dog responded, and soon the whole team was alert, silent but locked in place like they could feel something coming. I looked around but saw nothing. Just a blank world of white and wind. No movement, no shadow. But that only made it worse. I had the horrible sense that something was watching us, measuring us from beyond the horizon. The lead hunter's voice was calm, but it cut straight through the tension. "Don't move," he said softly. "If it comes, get behind the dogs." I swallowed hard, eyes scanning the ice with more desperation than skill. Everyone stayed motionless, even the youngest hunter, who crouched near the sled and double-checked each dog's harness. If one of them panicked, things could spiral fast. A loose dog could charge the bear, or worse, run back toward us and bring it along. Out here, the rules are different. Polar bears don't bluff. They don't fake charge or roar for intimidation like other predators. If one comes at you, it means business. And no matter how fast you think you are, it's faster. Its wide paws act like built-in snowshoes, spreading weight perfectly, allowing it to glide over thin ice that would crack under mine in seconds. I tried to slow my breathing, but my lungs weren't cooperating. I could feel every heartbeat in my arms, in my neck. My legs weren't trembling because of the cold anymore. That was pure adrenaline. The hunters didn't lift their rifles, not yet. but they shifted their stances, spreading out ever so slightly. It was a subtle move, not threatening, but enough to make us look larger, more organized, less like scattered prey. This wasn't a moment for panic. It was one for precision. Still nothing moved on the horizon, but the pressure, it grew with each second. Then the oldest hunter tapped my arm and tilted his head. I followed his gaze northward, squinting hard. At first, I saw nothing, just more of the same snow-draped silence. But then, there it was, a shape, shifting slightly against the frozen background. Pale, massive, moving. There it stood, massive and unmoving. Even from 300 yards away, the polar bear looked impossibly large. Its head was raised slightly, nose twitching, scanning the air like it was reading a scent trail written just for it. I'd seen bears in documentaries, but nothing prepared me for this. This one wasn't on a screen. It was real. It was watching us. And it was close. "If it stands up, don't run," the lead hunter said without looking away. I wasn't planning on running, mostly because my legs didn't seem capable of movement anymore. I was locked in place, frozen as much by fear as by the cold. The bear hadn't moved yet, but it didn't need to. The way it watched us said enough. It wasn't startled, it wasn't curious, it was calculating. The hunters remained calm, rifles still low, but ready. What struck me most wasn't their weapons, it was their hands. No shaking, no nervous gestures, just controlled stillness. If I were holding one of those rifles, the barrel would be jerking like a compass needle in a storm. This wasn't just about strength, this was about reading the moment. The bear took a step forward, not rushed, not hesitant. Just one heavy, deliberate step through the snow. That sound, the crunch of weight on ice, cut through the air like a warning. The youngest hunter glanced at the dogs. They hadn't barked, they hadn't moved, but their eyes were fixed on the bear, ears forward, muscles tight. Somehow they knew that silence was safer than sound. My thoughts spiraled. Polar bears can weigh up to 1,500 pounds. They can run faster than a human. They can smell prey from miles away. They are the only land predator known to actively hunt humans. And we were right here, in their hunting ground. The lead hunter reached slowly into his bag. Not a weapon, food. From the leather pouch, he pulled a blood-stained piece of seal meat and held it for a beat. Then, with a smooth, practiced motion, he tossed it onto the snow, midway between us and the bear. It landed with a dull thump. The red meat stark against the white ground. The bear's head snapped in that direction instantly. Its nose twitched faster, its eyes darting between us and the offering. No one said a word. "This is old trick," the youngest hunter murmured quietly. "If bear hungry, it will take gift." We all stood completely still. The bear took another step, then another. Slowly it approached the meat, never turning its back on us, never breaking eye contact for more than a second. When it reached the chunk, it sniffed once, twice, then clamped its jaws around it and stepped back a few paces. It didn't leave, but it didn't charge either. The meat bought us a moment, a chance. But watching the way the bear held its ground, chewing, always watching, I realized this wasn't over. Not yet. We held our breath as the bear chewed, its head low, eyes locked on us even while its jaws worked through the seal meat. It didn't eat like a hungry animal. It ate like a predator weighing its options. We weren't just something it noticed. We were now part of its calculation. I could feel the tension winding tighter with every second. The silence was louder than the wind, louder than the dogs, louder than the thoughts scrambling through my head. For a moment, the bear stepped back, still chewing, still watching. I thought maybe, just maybe, that was it. Then it moved forward again, one step, then two. Still calm, still slow, but closer. The lead hunter's voice was barely more than a breath. Too close. He didn't need to explain. The meat had worked, but not in the way we hoped. Instead of distracting the bear, it had possibly encouraged it. A dangerous shift, from fear to familiarity. Now, we weren't strangers. We were a source. The bear closed the distance, now within 150 yards. That number meant something to the hunters. I could see it in their posture. Their rifles, still at rest before, began to rise, slightly. Not aimed, not aggressive, just prepared. We throw more, it learns, the older hunter said quietly. Learns to follow. It was clear, another treat might keep it distracted, but at what cost? The bear might associate us with easy meals. A predator that loses fear of people isn't just dangerous, it's doomed, and so are the people it meets next. I could feel my muscles locking up again. There was no running, there was no hiding. If it came, the hunters would act, but not before trying everything else. The lead hunter adjusted his stance and raised his rifle, not toward the bear, but skyward. "Warning shot," he whispered. My pulse hammered. My chest felt too tight to hold a full breath. The bear moved again. Slow, deliberate, closing in. The wind shifted, blowing our scent in a clean stream straight to its nose. Its head lifted, its nostrils flared. It knew exactly who we were and where we stood. The hunter's finger curled around the trigger. Crack. The shot shattered the stillness, the echo bouncing off ice and vanishing into the distance like a signal flare. The sound punched the air. Even I flinched. My heart jumped so hard it felt like it left my ribs behind. The bear stopped dead in its tracks, its ears flattened, its massive body stiffened. Then, slowly it rose. Up on its hind legs, the polar bear looked like a nightmare carved from snow and muscle, 10 feet tall and surveying everything around it. From that height, it could see farther, smell better, understand more. It stood there, eerily motionless, a mountain of fur and intent. And then, it dropped back down, still facing us, still thinking. But something had changed. It no longer moved forward, it paced. The polar bear didn't back away. It didn't charge. Instead, it began pacing, a slow, measured rhythm across the ice. Left, right, pause, sniff the air, look back. It was trying to understand us, to decide. And we were frozen in that uncertainty, unsure which direction this moment would break. The rifle smoke faded into the wind, but its echo still rang in my ears. That shot was supposed to scare the bear off, and maybe it had, but not enough. The bear hadn't fled. It hadn't blinked. It had simply adapted. I looked at the hunters. They hadn't lowered their rifles, but they hadn't raised them fully either. Their stance was ready, but hopeful. They didn't want this to end in blood. That much was clear. "If it comes again, I shoot to stop," the lead hunter said calmly, eyes never leaving the pacing shape in the snow. The bear paused again, its black eyes locked onto us. The silence returned. Not peaceful, heavy, thick with the weight of a predator's next move. Behind me, the dogs hadn't moved an inch. It was almost unnatural. 10 animals frozen like carved statues, ears sharp, noses high, reading the wind better than any tool ever could. These dogs weren't just sled pullers. They were warning systems, guardians with fur and fangs, and yet they didn't bark. They didn't growl. They waited. So did we. The bear stopped pacing. Then, it did something no one expected. It turned. Just a few degrees, barely even a pivot, but it was facing away from us now. No one moved. It stepped forward, away from us. Another step, and another. Then it paused and glanced over its shoulder. That single look said everything. I'm leaving, but I could return. One last moment of tension, one final chance to react. But we didn't. We waited. And then, it resumed walking, slowly heading across the ice. We watched it grow smaller with each stride, from a towering beast to a hulking shape, from a hulking shape to a distant blur, until all that remained was a pale speck on the white horizon. Only when the bear had passed 500 yards did the lead hunter lower his rifle. A long breath escaped him. The others followed suit, exhaling without realizing they'd been holding it in. I did too. My legs didn't buckle, but they wanted to. We just stood face to face with one of the Arctic's deadliest predators and walked away untouched. That's respect, the oldest hunter murmured. Not a victory, not a conquest, just survival, with grace. The silence felt different now. Not tense, not dangerous, just wide open. The wind returned, brushing against my parka, as if the ice had finally let out its breath too. We weren't just visitors here, we were guests, and the host had chosen to let us leave. I don't remember the first thing I said after it was over. Maybe I didn't speak at all. My body was still running on leftover adrenaline, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to double-check I still had all 10 fingers. Bear decided we're not worth the trouble, the oldest hunter said with a dry grin. Good day to you. See Nanook, but keep arms and legs. It was his version of lighthearted relief, but his eyes told a deeper story, one of respect, not mockery, the kind you offer something that could have ended your life but didn't. I looked down at my limbs. Yep, still there, still trembling, but intact. Meanwhile, the hunters began checking the dogs and sled gear, its habit after a bear encounter. Sometimes animals get spooked and bolt, or the sled gets damaged in the scramble. But everything, surprisingly, was in place. Everything except my nerves. The moment still clung to me, thick as the frost in my eyelashes. I kept thinking about that look the bear gave us. Not fear, not anger, just awareness. It had made a choice to walk away. According to Inuit belief, that choice matters. They say the bear doesn't just leave, it spares. That belief stayed with me. The idea that a creature like Nanook could judge us and decide, on some ancient instinctive level, that we weren't a threat or a meal. Some even say polar bears can sense your thoughts, that they know your fear, your intent. I wasn't about to argue, not after what we'd just witnessed. The lead hunter spoke to the others in low Inuktitut. I didn't catch every word, but I caught the meaning. We wouldn't be hunting here anymore, not today. This stretch of land, this zone of ice, now belonged to the bear. When a polar bear claims an area, it's not just safer to leave, it's respectful, it's wise. The plan was to head 5 miles east to another set of breathing holes. New spot, fresh start. The group moved with quiet efficiency. No rush, no panic, just calm, deliberate motion. You don't sprint away from a bear's memory. You walk respectfully out of its shadow. As we prepared to leave, the hunters paused for one last moment, facing the direction the bear had gone. No words, no ceremony, just a stillness that said more than any speech could. A silent gesture of thanks, of acknowledgement. Between Inuit and Nanook, that's tradition, thousands of years deep. As we rode east, away from the memory of claws and power, I asked the lead hunter how often they saw bears. Sometimes many, he said. Sometimes none for months. His voice was steady, but there was a weight beneath it. Bears come hungry more now. Ice melts too soon, comes too late. His words hung in the air like frost. Not just a weather report, but a warning. We weren't the only ones struggling to survive this land. Back at the village, the warmth didn't come from the fire. It came from the voices. The story of the polar bear encounter spread quickly. Cups of hot tea were passed around, and soon the room filled with quiet nods and murmurs of recognition. No one reacted with shock, only understanding. The elders listened without interrupting, eyes narrowed, absorbing every detail. Then they began sharing their own. Tales from decades ago. Some told of near misses. Others spoke of bears that circled a camp for hours, or one that stood watching from a ridge without moving, just like ours had. One man, his hands leathery with age, pulled up his sleeve and pointed to a faded scar on his forearm. A memory. 50 years old. His voice was calm, not proud or fearful, just so honest. In the Arctic, these stories are shared not for drama, but for survival. They're warnings, lessons, reminders. These encounters aren't rare. They're part of life here. The rhythm of the land includes bears just as much as snow and silence. That evening I stepped outside. The Arctic sky was dark, but not empty. Stars scattered above us like shattered ice across the black. I thought back to earlier, when that massive creature stood just yards away, choosing whether to attack or walk. The wind had picked up, but I barely felt it. My mind was still out there on the ice. The hunters were already discussing the next day's route, calm, quiet, ready to continue. Survival doesn't stop because of fear. It moves forward because of it. We'd hunt again tomorrow, just not in the same direction. Not where the bear had walked. That space was his now. As we prepared gear for the next trip, I thought about what I'd witnessed, not just the nearness of danger, but the nearness of understanding. The Inuit don't just live in the Arctic. They live with it. They don't try to conquer the land or dominate the animals. They listen, read the signs, adjust course when necessary. That's what survival really looks like. That's what respect looks like. This isn't a world where people and polar bears can coexist in peace forever. It's changing. The ice melts earlier now. It returns later. The bears are hungry more often. That shift ripples across every living thing here, from the seals to the hunters to the sled dogs to the foxes trailing behind a predator in hope of scraps. But still, there is space for both. There has to be, because the Arctic doesn't belong to one species. It's shared. If you step onto this ice, you enter a story already in motion, told in paw prints, in wind patterns, in ancient eyes watching from the white. And if you're lucky, as we were, that story lets you walk away.